the sharpness that he has, the pace. Physically, he's back to his absolute best, which was not really the case in the last 2 years for different reasons. But so is he the best in the world? Right now, I don't know if he's amongst them for sure, yeah. It's whatever your preference is. But he's carrying this team. And I don't know if this is a good thing for Real Madrid or not a good thing for Real Madrid. It's certainly a good thing for Kylian Mbappe and for France.
So welcome to the EuroLeagues. We will be zoning in on the Champions League week through the prism of some of the high-performing number 9s on the continent. So everything from a Parisian teenager to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang still going at 36, Kylian Mbappe and Rasmus Højlund. Yes, really. We'll also be live in the tiny Swedish fishing village of Mjallby. We're going to talk to their assistant coach because they can win the title this weekend for the first time in their 86-year club history. We'll start with the big game of the week. So as I said before, we're going to channel the performances of the great number 9s over the course of this Champions League match week. So PSG beat Barcelona 2-1 in Catalonia. 19-year-old Senny Mayulu, Goncalo Ramos got the goals for PSG. So our first two number 9s, I think Mayulu, Jules, is an interesting one to talk about because he's basically the other guy who scored in the Champions League final. And by the time he scored, if he'd scored the first, we'd be like, oh my goodness, teenager, Champions League final, amazing. But it sort of faded away in the midst of that massive story, didn't it?
Yeah, I can hear you in that way. Although he had turned 19 2 weeks before, he had been kind of highlighted by the people at the club from the academy as potentially the next big thing, and we don't know how big and how high he could go, but certainly there was a bit of hype around him already, and Luis Enrique has always said this guy is special, he can play everywhere as a 9, as a false 9, wide in midfield, and Luis Enrique loves those profiles who are like super versatile. So we knew how good he was, but you're right, by the time, I guess the most striking thing about his goal in that Champions League final, not just the fact that he maybe gets a little bit forgotten, is his celebration and his reaction. Because really, when you're 19, just turned 19, in a squad like this, in a game like this, you probably don't think you're going to come on. And then you come on because the game is won already and you can go and win it. But surely you don't think that you can score more goals and that you will be one of the goal scorers. And it's a great goal as well that he scored with his left foot like he did yesterday. And he's a super talented kid. At the club, they said that his younger brother, who's 14, who's also at the PSG Academy, is actually better than Senny himself. Certainly that Senny was at the same age. So there might be more to come from the Mayulu family. Paris born and bred, of course, it has to be said. But yeah, it was a big call from I think from Luis Enrique to start him last night, and it paid off massively, like pretty much everything Luis Enrique did last night.
Guillem, I'm already bored by the amazing talent that comes out of Paris Saint-Germain, and the fact that not only have we got another one here, but he might not even be the best in his family is just frightening.
Yes, but let me take it to one of the themes of the season for me. What do people that think that in a structured football you cannot get talent, that talent will be eaten alive because they're now robots? And all of a sudden, when you see talent like this exploiting their talent and their qualities, it means that the thinking is wrong from those that feel that the style that we saw yesterday from both sides is a style that only fits certain games or certain teams and certain obsessed managers. It's the future. And in that structure, talent can be respected. So I'm taking the game to the style of both games. It was absolutely fantastic football. It was entertaining of the highest level. It was two teams that wanted to take risks. And if you don't defend high when you can, space will open up. And if you don't defend side-courageously, space open up. And they're doing it because defending high means less running. And when you steal the ball, you attack this organized team. Same as when Vitinha lost the ball for the first goal of Barcelona. If you beat the press, there is room to attack. It's absolutely fantastic. I admit it, perhaps only the fans of the teams that win this style are now truly embracing it. But we see in the future, when we see the likes of PSG and Barcelona, that's how football is gonna be played.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's remarkable to see what we've kind of seen in the Premier League as well in terms of late finishes to games. We've just spoken about Mayulu as well. Goncalo Ramos coming on and scoring the winner in the 90th minute. And Ramos, in some respects, has been forgotten about because of the impact that those young players have made coming off the bench in these big games, in the Champions League final. I mean, we kind of... I remember being at the Champions League final with Jules celebrating at half-time practically.
I remember it as well.
and already filing a report on Désiré Doué. And yet, you look at the kind of how exciting that lineup last night. I think Barcola had lost his place in that Champions League final. And but to go back to this trend that we've seen in the Premier League where teams throwing caution to the wind, really, taking risks, as Guillem has said. And Goncalo, the guy who, how much did they pay for him, Jules? When people forget,
60 or 70.
60 or 70 to be a guy who was a kind of a backup striker when he came, or someone who they thought would succeed Colomwani or something like that. And yet he's been superseded by these young players, and yet still has his moment away at Barcelona.
The other thing, Jules, which I think is quite frightening about PSG is I've kind of gone in on Mayulu here because of the number 9s chat and what have you and the Champions League final goal. But actually, without wanting to put words in your mouth on Paris Saint-Germain, I suspect he's not the one that there is the most excitement about at the moment.
No, maybe not. Although he's done really well, I think he's Luis Enrique's favourite of all those youngsters that Luis Enrique is kind of preparing to come into this team. And we talk about Mayulu, and there's obviously Ibrahima Mbappe, who started on that left-hand side, or on the right-hand side first, and then switched to the left. The first goal is doing the 1-2 with Nuno Mendes on that left-hand side, who started for PSG when he was 16. He was really the jewel of the academy, even more than maybe Mayulu was, or Zaire Emery was, or others before, and maybe some in the future too. But he was a little bit too shy in a way in his first games. But yesterday it was outstanding. And what Luis Enrique always says to those kids especially, but to everybody else as well, is like, we've got principles of play, we've got a style, we've got a system, although there's a lot of fluidity within the structure. We've kept repeating that all through last season. But he also said, I trust anybody who comes into the system to do well. Okay, if you're Mayulu, you're probably not going to be as good as Dembele because he's Ousmane Dembele, but you still have your part to play in the same way that Dembele plays his part. You make runs on purpose that are not going to get to see the ball, but help your midfielder, help your winger, help your team in something. Everything that those PSG players do is for a reason. Even when you think they just run for no reason and make a run and the ball doesn't come to them, it's for a reason. So within that system, and Luis Enrique explained it very well after the game on Wednesday night, saying this is what we are, and everybody who comes in or out can have a very good impact on it. And those kids, and the youngest one that came on was Quentin and Ndjantou yesterday for the last 10 minutes.
He's the one who I thought you might jump straight onto, actually.
And there's a great story there. I mean, again, Paris born and bred, which is very special again when you come through the academy of your own city. But when he was 10, he was playing for Paris FC before making the switch to PSG. And when he was 10, they had a tour in Spain with Paris FC. They had an amazing team. Paris FC is known for having those incredible grassroots teams and a lot of players like Ibrahima Konate. Liverpool, for example, came from Paris FC grassroots teams. And Ndjantou and his team played Barcelona under 10s with Lamine Yamal in that team. And they got beaten on that day 8 years ago. And last night, for the second time in their lives, they faced each other again. This time it was not like a friendly nine-a-side in somewhere in Catalonia. It was at Montjuic, but in Barcelona, in the Champions League. And yeah, of course, Lamine is much better right now than Ndjantou, and Ndjantou might never catch up anyway. But at least yesterday, Ndjantou said that he beat Lamine this time.
Let's move on, shall we, to Galatasaray then, shall we? Because we've talked about the big game on paper, if you like. It was always going to be Barca PSG. But I think arguably the biggest result for one of the continental clubs was that victory for Galatasaray over Liverpool. 1-0 on Tuesday night. And again, number 9s is the theme. Victor Osimhen, player of the match, scored the winning penalty for Gala. Obviously, Liverpool fans will be very, very frustrated with the result. It's one of those nights where people are reminded of the fact that Victor Osimhen has ended up at Galatasaray and not where a lot of people thought he would end up, which is one of the top European leagues.
Yeah, I mean, this time last year he was on loan to Galatasaray. I didn't think many people thought at the time that it would be a deal that would be made permanent. It was almost a kind of Napoli have held out for too much money. Osimhen's held out for too much money. He hasn't gotten the move he wanted. And so when the European transfer window closed, it's like, well, he's not going to play for Napoli again. Galatasaray is a short fix. And I think it is pretty telling that he is still there. Galatasaray are a massive club with an incredible fan base. And as Guillem and yourself, Steve, were talking, big players, Wesley Sneijder, they go there and they're like, wow, this is unbelievable. You know, this is just as good as playing for Real Madrid, just as good as playing for Inter. So I think there's an element of that to it. But in terms of like another team not really coming in for him from the Premier League, a rival of Napoli's in Serie A, or a Spanish team, I think it speaks to two things. His injury record. You know, he had one very good season at Napoli when they won the league for the first time in 33 years. But his other seasons at Napoli, you know, he wears the mask because, you know, he broke his cheekbone and now wears it out of superstition. But, yeah, his body is broken down on other occasions. And then the other concern, I think, certainly for Premier League clubs, is AFCON. AFCON comes in January, and that is the part of the season which is most congested, it's most attritional. You need players. And for the money that sort of Victor Osimhen expects after being top scorer in Italy in Napoli's first title-winning season since Maradona, you know, you're kind of like, okay, what? So you're going to be away for a month? No, that doesn't work for us. And so I think that is ultimately the reason why he was at Galatasaray. And yes, he was player of the match, but what happened? I think he came off injured.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So there you go.
Jules, it's a bit short-sighted for teams to not go for an Osimhen because of the Cup of Nations. I know it takes him out for a proportion of time. He's still a heck of a player.
Yeah, no, I think James was right though. It's not just AFCON, it's everything else that comes with it, plus AFCON, because it's not ideal. I mean, I won't name them, but there were managers in France who didn't want to sign players who would go to AFCON. Just like, I can't lose you between mid-December and potentially the end of January. This is too long. You know, if I sign you and you're one of my key players, what do I do without you for 6 weeks at the busiest time, you know, or one of the busiest times, because there's a winter break in France, for example. But so, in a way, I think it's not helping, maybe. I think there are bigger issues for Osimhen and people around him than just AFCON.
You think of the greatest African player of his generation, Mo Salah. Yeah, it's not really an issue, I think, for Salah to go to AFCON, because Salah, when he comes back, Salah barely gets injured.
Yeah.
Even at this stage in his career, Salah plays all the time, with the exception of the Galatasaray game. But he is always there. You know, that is the one outstanding attribute about Mo Salah, among several outstanding attributes. Julian always says talent is availability is a talent.
Is it? Yeah, the best ability is availability.
There you go. And Mo Salah has that. Victor Osimhen does not have that. You know, Victor Osimhen has spent a lot of time injured in the last 5 years. And yeah, so if you're going to allocate that amount of money in a transfer fee, which was 75 million that Galatasaray paid, and by the way, Napoli said, we have to see 40 of it up front because you have to pay us, Galatasaray. You know, this isn't just a figure you tell us today and change later. Like, if you're going to commit that amount of money and the wages, and then, let's say you're Man United, build your attack around that player, build winning games around that player, and that player's not around, either because he's away on international duty or he's in the treatment room, that is a massive thing for clubs to think about.
Now, given this is the EuroLeagues, we don't normally focus too much on the English teams at this stage in the competition. Clearly, when it gets to the knockout rounds and, you know, these are the big stories in town, then that's what we'll do. However, I did want to touch on one Liverpool player here, Guillem, because a lot of the discourse at the minute around Ibrahima Konate is that he's been struggling and he's been making errors, etc., etc. And the thing that goes along with that is the story that Real Madrid are interested in him. So I'm just conscious, given what's happened so far this season, and he did make another error, a key error in that Galatasaray game. Is he still on Real Madrid's list? Is he still as high up the list? What's the situation there?
Yes, it's one of those players that Real Madrid have identified as potential future players because of the contract situation. Real Madrid have decided for a long time they cannot compete with PSG or Manchester City in certain um, transfer fees, but they can convince them through the history and the success that you can let the contract run and then we'll go for you. That's what Konate has been told. That's why he said no to the first offer of contract from Liverpool. Now there is another offer on the table, and Liverpool are very confident that an agreement can be reached. But at the moment, it has not been reached. And to be honest, it's one of the weaknesses of Real Madrid. With Rudiger, there are doubts. Asensio is not good enough. Alaba gone. So it's Hudson and Militao with a couple of youngsters, Jacobo Ramon and Joan Martinez, under 20s that probably will end up somewhere else. So it is a player that definitely have in the radar.
Jules, I think you're going to struggle with one story on the Euroleagues this season, and it's going to come up a few times, I think. Marseille are good. Marseille are good.
It's good for me and for French football if Marseille are good. Trust me, I would rather Marseille being good than being bad. No, it's true, because they're still not as good to beat my team anyway. But they are good.
You get paid the same amount to talk about Marseille as you do PSG. That's what it's all about.
And I've never been scared to go to the Velodrome, and I'm a PSG fan. But they were good on Tuesday night against Ajax, who they destroyed. The best thing about that game... And
it's
this
4-0,
is why,
wasn't it? In the end?
Yeah, 4-0. And this is why so stay with me. But this is why it's important. You remember, I think I've told you many times about with the national team, with France especially, for many years. When I was working at Le Parisien newspaper, me and a guy from L'Équipe newspaper used to hide and spy on the last training behind closed doors the day before games, right? To be able to report, because you could tell who was going to play the next day, you know, what the dynamic. So we did all sort of things, right?
Hold on. I've never heard this before.
Of course you have.
No, you have never told that story on the Euroleague.
Yeah, this
knows it.
This is important journalism on the continent. I'm not sure whether Guillem's done it, but I've been with Italians where there'll be one of us the spotter, and then the other is like listing the name down of what the 11 is. Yeah.
Surely you know. Surely I've told you this story
No.
before.
Okay, so you spied on Marseille then, I'm guessing.
No. But they.
Is this where Bielsa learned it? Learned it from you?
Not from me. But when Dominic was with the national team and us at Le Parisien at the time, L'Équipe, everybody had plenty of issues with him, and he had issues with us. One of the things that I used to say, to the point that even my granddad, when he was still with us, and he used to like follow everything I was doing and all of that. And Dominic one day said, those French journalists to spy on us and reveal the training behind closed door to the opposition. That was his big thing. He's like, why are you telling us our secret? Who's going to play? And we say, listen, we just inform our readership. This is what we do. We don't inform the coach of the team that you're going to play tomorrow. But even my granddad, and to be fair, my mother-in-law, when she was still with us, because he also made the Guardian newspaper here. I remember the argument we had with Dominic, accusing like his own media to play in favor of the opposition, basically. That was it. Mm-hmm. So like, why are you doing that? So like, but people want to know who's going to play the next day, basically. But so to go back to my story.
Yes.
When De Zerbi learned who Ajax were going to play, and more importantly, who was injured for Ajax, he changed all his plans on the day of the game. And De Zerbi is a great coach, and this is not surprising in a way, because this is how good he is. But he had a plan with a midfield and a front three that became a very different midfield and a very different front three when on the day of the game, he realized that Ajax were without Dolberg and Wout Weghorst, for example. And he was very honest after the game to say, once I saw that Weghorst was not going to play, I knew that Ajax would change the way they played. They would not be able to lump the ball forward to him because he's such a big guy to hold it up. So we could put them under massive pressure, and a high press could be very effective. Hence why he didn't play Højbjerg, for example, who was supposed to start in midfield, the former Spurs midfielder. Instead, Vermeeren, the young Belgian guy, plus O'Reilly that Guillem mentioned earlier, because of their intensity and energy and mobility, we're going to close Ajax down so well. And guess what? Marseille scored 3 goals in the first 20 minutes, 2 of them with high recoveries. Okay, it was poor passing for Klaassen and Berghuis, but still, that was because of the pressure. And that's simply on De Zerbi being aware of the qualities, or more in this case, the flaws of Ajax, and changing his team literally hours before kickoff to make this Marseille team very efficient against Ajax, and he deserves a lot of credit for it.
I'm really, really curious now about your spying missions, because you said there's a spotter. So what that makes me think is, do you start out as the spotter if you're there for the first time? Do you then grow into it to be one of the real spies? How does it work?
No, I mean, I did this during the Euros in the summer, where we would go and watch Italy train in Iserlohn. And you do this whole thing when the players come out of the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Someone names them, someone writes down the names, and then by process of elimination, you realise, right, who's in the treatment room, who's injured, and that sort of thing. And then again, I mean, this is why I remember the perimeter in Iserlohn. They had security. You have people walking around with dogs, protecting.
They put fences up and everything.
Clubs these days put big fences up with tarpaulin to basically stop the likes of Jules and Julian, basically spying on them. But I enjoyed when Jules said when De Zerbi saw that Wout Weghorst wasn't playing. Clearly, he saw from the bushes, whilst he was watching a training session. This is knowing the team. The night before, being able to confidently say in the newspaper, "This is the team," is, I would say, the most important thing, and the thing that journalists on the continent, right, at least in Italy and maybe France, feel the most pressure about.
Yeah.
And it's why if you're in a press conference with journalists, their questions about is this player going to play? Is this player going to play? And there's a game that goes on between the coach and the journalist where I've been there with Max Allegri, where like, I've given you two names.
Yeah.
You try and figure out the rest. Whereas for us, it's not like that. And I remember when Carlo Ancelotti came and coached Chelsea, Carlo was like, God, press conferences here are easy. You just ask me whether it's like, wow, it's Carlo against Mourinho, or it's Carlo against Wenger. And he's like, well, yeah, I can indulge that and say, oh, I've got a lot of respect for Arsene. Whereas in the past, in Italy, it'd be just like, we saw Igor Tudor wasn't training today, Carlo. Is he going to play in the week? Are you going to play 4-2-3-1? Much easier for coaches from abroad to come over here and deal with the media who aren't spying on them.
I think the coaches have got a lot of fun in the press conferences with that kind of thing, because there's another story, there's another side to that story. You get that information somehow by spying or because you heard it. And I don't know how ethically right this is, or you've done it.
If you have to start a sentence that way, then...
It's probably not, yeah. But you will go to the manager, the rival manager says, have you heard that this is happening in the other team? You go, and then, of course, you try to get some advantage that way. But in most cases, I'd say 99%, it was like, yeah, not only we know that, we also know that this is happening, that happening. So how do you know? It's taken as, Jules jumping off a fence and finding out something, and James just getting his notebook out.
I've got so many stories you don't want to know.
And they basically say, because we know somebody on the other team that tells us anyway, it's not that important, which kills a little bit the story. But everybody spies on everybody, and everybody knows everything that's going on generally.
I almost forgot that we were meant to be talking about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but we've still got time to do that. Who, what is he, 36 now, Jules? Yeah. I think one of the really interesting things about him is, so for those that don't know, he was at Marseille. He had a season 2 seasons ago when he scored 30 goals for club and country. Then he went to Saudi, but he's come back. I think when he went, people probably thought that was that for him, top-level European football? Yeah,
I think that's fair. And he didn't want to leave Marseille. He had a 2-year contract. He was very happy there. It's just you could not turn down the offer from Saudi and Al Qadsiya at his age. Not that he needed the money, but just it's there on the table for you. It's a massive paycheck. You take it. It could last a year, 2, probably after that. If you're Aubameyang, you can still find a decent club and decent project in Europe anyway. So I think he always had that in the back of his head. And then when Marseille were looking for another striker, on top of Guiri, who they already have and who's very good, they thought, let's try Aubameyang. And he was so happy to come back. So happy in a very Aubameyang kind of thing, because it took him a bit of time to come back and for everything to be agreed and for him to come back to France, to Marseille, to sign the contract. It just took a bit long because he was waiting for his Ferrari, Furosangue, to be actually delivered.
Sorry.
Yes.
No.
So he could arrive at the same time as the Ferrari.
No.
And not just before, not just after. I mean, this is pure Aubameyang. He's an incredible guy, really. But clearly the car was very important in the process of signing this contract. And this Ferrari is incredible, by the way. There are not many in the world.
I remember coming out of doing a EuroLeagues, where we are now in BBC Broadcasting House or whatever, Jules and I, and Aubameyang drove past.
Yes.
In one of his supercars.
Yeah, that's very true. So he came back and it was amazing on Tuesday night at 36 to still have the energy and the pace. He's not as quick as he used to be, obviously, but to have the experience now, his flick on the first goal for Igor Pacho is amazing.
Yeah.
His finishing is great. He pressed, and he can't probably play 90 minutes with a high intensity, but he's such a great guy to have in the dressing room. And for all the great number nines that we're going to talk about on the show, throughout the show, he's not at the level, of course, of Kylian or Haaland or guys like that. I get that. But for the last 15 years, he's been an amazing, reliable striker everywhere he's been, pretty much. And that again, deserves a lot of plaudits.
I'd just like, Guillem, that we get to kind of have a little sort of swan song, if you like, for Aubameyang in Europe. Because when he went, it happened very quickly, didn't it? And he's one of those players who is instantly recognisable across the continent because he's not just played for big clubs, he's played for big clubs in many countries.
Yes, and I must say right now is the perfect place for him, if you like. Is a team that's very well structured with players that do a lot of running. Perhaps the striker position is still a weak point for them. But meanwhile, he's assisting and scoring. And that mixture of misfits and veterans and players, up and coming players and players that want to prove a point that De Zerbi is putting together is regaining, by the way, the fame that De Zerbi had, not only as an advanced pupil of the positional game and Pep Guardiola, but as somebody that can manage all those people. I was at the Real Madrid Marseille game, and even though you could see what they were trying to do and they're miles away from what De Zerbi wants, everybody, including Aubameyang, gave absolutely everything for the manager. And when they beat PSG, the pictures that come from the changing room certainly is one of happiness, including Auba as well, of course.
Yeah, I think at the weekend when Marseille played, Levi Colville was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was there.
And Levi obviously is a Chelsea player, but he played
at Brighton.
He played with De Zerbi at Brighton, and credits Roberto with getting him into the kind of form that made Chelsea think, actually, we should keep this guy, we should bring him back. And that's the sort of bond that Roberto strikes up with his players, because in working with them, they see improvement, not only in their performances, but in how they think about the game. And so to Guillem's point there about players giving everything for him, that is one thing but players want to sign for De Zerbi teams and they want to play for him because they believe they can learn from him. And I think in Aubameyang's case, I mean, at his age, Guillem mentioned the running around him. You're going to play in a team that creates a load of chances. Yeah. And, one of the things that Roberto loves to do is invite teams on to them, play through them. And you create space that way for someone with Aubameyang, who even if he doesn't have the pace, he's still got enough pace to take advantage of situations like that.
Lots to get through. Kevin De Bruyne, Kylian Mbappe, Julian Alvarez, all on the way. First, we're going to Sweden to discuss what I think might be the big underdog story in European football right now. We're talking about Mjallby, a club from a fishing village of around 800 people who are on the verge of winning their first ever major trophy. Founded in 1939, one result away from winning the Allsvenskan, the top division in Sweden, for the very first time. And actually, it's probably not even going to be close because they're 11 points clear with 5 games to go. We are delighted to say that their assistant coach, Dr. Karl Marius Aksum, has joined us live on the EuroLeagues. Karl, good evening. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Please tell us what is going on in Mjallby. How are you doing this?
Good question. I came in 2 years ago, so 2 seasons ago. I was asked to change the attacking game model of the club. together with the other coaching staff, we started playing a different kind of football where we wanted to control the games, press higher, have more possession. And we have worked with the same group now for almost 2 years. And we're starting to see the fruits of that work now. Last season was good, but of course this season has been incredible.
Is it kind of odd in that, like, you're not going to say that you're going to win the league, obviously, because you don't want to jinx it, but you must be in such a weird position now whereby everybody knows you are so close. So how are you all managing to kind of keep a lid on it, so to speak? Because the level of excitement and expectation must be through the roof.
Yes, but I think for everyone around us, this is like the biggest thing in their lives, the community. For us, it's the normal work every day, the training, preparing for the next opponent. We want the best performance possible. I can honestly say we've never discussed where we're going to end up, and we never thought about it. And we are all about performances.
Karl, you mentioned already a little bit your game model and especially the press. But could you maybe explain a little bit more what is about? What is the idea that you want? How you transmitted it to the players? And we've got the whole hour, so take your time. It's so good.
That will be like really nerding into the football part of it. But I could say, for me, it starts by controlling the game from the back. So I always start, can we create superiorities from the back? Against a man-man, that's difficult, but we use the goalkeeper. But often in Sweden, we still facing zonal defenses. So we create a +2, and we are the team who plays the most passes in our own third of the pitch. We want to control every game. We don't want chaos games. We want control. So in the last 2 seasons, we increased possession by 10%. So now we went from, this team was always a low block, counter-attacking set-piece team. Now we have the 4th highest possession, and we really want to control every game. We play in a 3-2-4-1 system, so it's the same system as Manchester United, but we do it much better. Honestly, I'm a Manchester United fan, and I'm really mad when I see Manchester United play.
Why?
You could fix them, Karl, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%.
What makes you mad about them?
For me, it's you start with a 3-2-4-1, but you need tactical variation. You need the wing backs higher. You need the 10s to be dropping out in pockets. You need to be able to go from 1-6 to 3 10s, maybe play a diamond in the midfield as Chelsea does sometimes. Go 3-1-6 as PSG. You have to have much more variation according to the opponent you are facing. So I really don't like the way Manchester United has developed the game.
But do you think your system and the way you want the team to play can be transformed, moved into a bigger club? And is that where football is going? More structured football, where fans are going to have to accept it, and players are going to have to work through it, really, to have regular spaces in these teams?
I think for the first, yes, 100%. The principles we use can work at the top level. I know the Swedish league is now ranked much lower, but the principles will work the same. My PhD is in scanning. I know how important scanning is. We've had some number 6s in Manchester United who was really not good at scanning.
Hang on, Karl. You're a legend. So I don't know if
everybody should know this. Casemiro is really bad at scanning. McTominay was bad at scanning.
We do. Hang on. First, a PhD on scanning, as in like players can. That's what you mean, scanning, as in not scanning
not
paperwork.
scanning things into a printer.
Yeah, that's not what you mean, right?
Head movements to gather information in the game. And my PhD was named Visual Perception in Elite Football. And one of the studies I did in Premier League with Premier League players. So I counted every scan for an entire season of a Premier League team. And so you see the best teams today. They have incredible scanners centrally. You see Vitinha in PSG, You see Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice in Arsenal. You see Rodri in Manchester City. These are the top level scanners in world football today.
Just want to ask you before we let you go, Karl, because you've given us loads of your time and you've been brilliant. I know it isn't done yet. If it were to happen this weekend, what would the celebrations look like?
Have no idea.
Come on, you do.
You must.
You
I
must.
have no idea. This would be the first celebration in this area for all time. So I believe these local guys on the team from this area, they know how to party. So if that should happen, I just have to get on board and just follow the crowd.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well answered. Oh, listen, Karl, it's been brilliant having you on. Congratulations on your success. I won't say the title because it isn't done yet, but it's clearly an amazing achievement what you've done already. And thank you so much for speaking to us. Honestly, it's been fascinating.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Right. I think the only possible way that we can follow a guest of the quality of Dr. Karl is to talk Kylian Mbappe. Let's just go straight to the top of the top because we want to talk Real Madrid. We'll talk Atleti as well after their games in the Champions League. And of course, they played each other in the derby on Saturday. Real Madrid losing 5-2. We'll touch on that. They were in Almaty in the Champions League on Tuesday. Mbappe scored a hat-trick and you were there, Guillem.
Yes, Almaty is an interesting place. So is Kazakhstan, a country with 100 ethnic groups, 20 religions. Everybody seems to get on really well. And the stadium was, of course, a party. Not intimidating. I think they're just very happy to be in the Champions League. And they were very, very happy to have Real Madrid coming in. There were lots of Chinese fans because China is only like 300 miles away at the other side of the mountains. And but it was very, very difficult to get a ticket for a stadium that hosts about 23,800 people. But it was an important game for Real Madrid, not just to win, but to impose with a good result and a good performance. And that happened. It was 15 minutes in which Kairat did their bit of pressuring high, making life difficult to Real Madrid. And then the goals came. Hat-trick from Mbappe. I think we've seen more and more of these things happening. Hat-tricks from top strikers. And the rest was just a way of forgetting for now what happened against Atletico Madrid. But there will be new tests. The biggest defeats of Real Madrid, the only two have been against PSG and Atletico Madrid, big defeats, and it's Juventus and Barcelona coming soon as well. So let's see where the project is at the moment.
Jules, I've got a really basic question here on Kylian Mbappe, but it kind of feels like the right time to ask it. So obviously, we've just had the Ballon d'Or, and Ousmane Dembele won it. But is Kylian Mbappe now back to being the best player in the world right now, if you see what I mean?
So I think this is the best version of himself. I don't think I've ever seen him as good as this. He's 15 goals already. He's never scored.
Scanning?
I mean, as a number 9, you don't scan, certainly not the same way as the players that we mentioned in midfield earlier. But like 15 goals at the end of September, he'd never done it. I think the start of the 18-19 season, he had a pretty good start, but it was not that many goals for club and country. I mean, it's a goal every 65 minutes, which is pretty special. Not as good as Kane and Haaland so far in the stats, but the best I've seen him, I think, is the sharpness that he has, the pace. Physically, he's back to his absolute best, which was not really the case in the last 2 years for different reasons. But so is he the best in the world? Right now, I don't know if he's amongst them for sure. Yeah, it's whatever your preference is. But he's carrying this team. And I don't know if this is a good thing for Real Madrid or not a good thing for Real Madrid. It's certainly a good thing for Kylian Mbappe and for France. But from a Real Madrid point of view, there's still so much work to be done collectively for this team and the project that Guillem just mentioned that I'm not really sure being so reliant on Kylian and so dependent in a way on him, because I don't know where they will be without him. I'm not sure how good this is really.
Well, they won every game apart from those two, but it's quite clearly the case that I think Xabi Alonso hasn't got the midfielders to do what he wants to do, and I don't know how you sort that out. Certainly not by improvising Arda Güler as a midfielder, or upsetting Valverde because he doesn't play in the way he would like to. He's got to fit in Bellingham, but it's early days. It's very early days. What I find fascinating, though, and that's something that was mentioned in the WhatsApp group preparing this show, is the fact that Mbappe is now scoring for fun, like scoring a hat-trick. It doesn't seem like a like a big thing. Okay, it was Kairat, Almaty, but Harry Kane is doing the same. Julian Alvarez scoring also loads. So is Haaland. So I asked around and see what coaches, managers think of this new trend, I feel. And it's interesting. They see, number one, that teams are more and more going man to man. And if you beat that, there is more and more situations with open spaces, which obviously players of talent can take advantage of. Two, there are a lot of teams that risk a lot as they build from the back. So you lose possession. And then again, that can be taken advantage of by the players of quality. Three, a new tendency that the new coaches, instead of being defensive and building from that, is completely the opposite. They want to impress because they want to basically get a more prestige job, and prestige jobs have to do with your team being offensive. And finally, the teams that they face, these big sides, the Atletico Madrid, the Real Madrid, the Manchester City, they defend very, very compact and very deep. And teams, coaches are learning to beat those traps. And there's more individual coaching, including scanning, which means that players have got more in their armor to be able to score more goals. So it seems like it's going to be more and more on that. Strikers just beating records, even Ronaldo record already. I think Mbappe has reached the 60 goal mark in the Champions League in less games than Ronaldo did.
Here's one for you then, James. Do you think Kylian Mbappe becoming, as Jules was saying, that best version of himself again is partially because of Xabi Alonso or partially in spite of Xabi Alonso?
I think it's being at Real Madrid for a year.
So neither.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for dealing with all the baggage that he had last year of leaving his hometown club. You know, he hadn't always been at Paris. You know, we first came to know him when he was at Monaco, but, you know, Paris was home for him. That was quite an acrimonious way to leave, you know, which continued after he left with that court case about money, which is a distraction, no matter how you want to think about it. And then you go to the biggest club in the world, and there's a lot of pressure, scrutiny on you. How do you deal with that? He prepared in lots of different ways. You know, we all remember how he had that photo of his bedroom where he kind of manifested this idea of going to Real Madrid. But until you get there, you know, you can learn Spanish and adapt, but you've got to learn, you know, how you might react to certain criticism, a new media, learn your new teammates, their habits, balance in the team, which was a problem last year. It's still a problem this year. But I do think he's more at home at Madrid now than he was a year ago, and I think that's been to his benefit. I'm sure Xabi has had some contribution to the best version of Kylian that we're seeing so far, and sometimes also, I wonder what he felt last year, Steve, and Jules might be able to pick on this. You leave PSG and they win the Champions League.
Yeah.
What might that do in terms of motivation? Because a lot of people after that wanted to mock Mbappe a little bit and say, you shouldn't have left. That was silly. And players do use this. You know, it's that Michael Jordan quote. I took that personally. And you wonder if that's made him come back, perform like he has. Let's not forget, it's a World Cup year as well. And I think we said this on the show a few weeks ago. The Ballon d'Or, you know, in the Ronaldo and Messi era coming to an end, everyone thought the next guy was always going to be Mbappe. He's still not won a Ballon d'Or. The Ballon d'Or has gone to Modric, it's gone to Dembele, it's gone to Rodri. It still hasn't come to him. It's kind of overdue that it should come to him. And I think all of these things have kind of coalesced and maybe, from a psychological point of view, explain why we're seeing this Mbappe now.
If we're talking about nines and reliance, are Real Madrid more or less reliant on Mbappe than Atleti are on Julian Alvarez now?
Stats will tell you that Atletico Madrid depend more on Julian Alvarez, but that Real Madrid depend a lot on Mbappe. Certainly, something changed when Atletico Madrid were beaten by Liverpool, having come back from 2-0 down to 2-2. There was more confidence from the side. The team is playing better. They're more aggressive without the ball, in the way they run into spaces, in the way they recover possession, and all that benefits Julian Alvarez, who scored 5 goals in 2 games, and most of them really beautiful goals as well. So when Simeone was talking about we have to look after Julian Alvarez, I thought he was referring to the fact that he's not playing 90 minutes because he hasn't got them in him, and physically perhaps he's not that kind of player. No, what actually he was saying is we need to get a team that plays good football for him to take advantage of, so he doesn't get bored and goes to Barcelona, which is what Barcelona are already trying to do. But now they manage, it seems anyway, in the last 3 games, seems like Atletico Madrid have got it right. And by getting that right, you get a very good Julian Alvarez. But Julian Alvarez in that team is the only one that is world class, as in a player that can win games. At the moment at Real Madrid, there's a room for improvement from Vinicius, certainly from Rodrigo, but Jude Bellingham is there as well. There are others that could replace a bad day of Mbappe. I don't think that can happen at Atletico Madrid. So Julian Alvarez is more important.
And I feel like, Jules, before we move on, we have to have a mention for Antoine Griezmann here, getting his 200th goal for Atleti.
Yeah, and it was lovely as well. They had the shirt ready. Don't take your shirt off. You go Kitike when you score an important goal. And he's past his best. We know that, right? He decided to stay when he could have gone to MLS. He will go to MLS this summer or the summer after. But it's inevitable that he will go to MLS, and it would probably be would have been the right thing to do, because I think he knew, and I think we all knew, that certainly as a starter, he could not do it every game, week in and week out for Atletico like he used to before. And the main guy is Julian Alvarez, like the main guy is Kylian Mbappe for Real Madrid. This is what happens. He's not the main guy anymore. However, for all the games where he was a bit anonymous this season, and they've been already, whether he started or coming off the bench, the kind of games that he had against Frankfurt and that kind of performance still reminds you of what an incredible magician and talented boy he was, and still is. And he can still do it. He won't be as regularly as before because he's 34 and the legs are gone, but the intelligence, the mind, the scanning, Dr. Karl, is still so much there that you see. And when he's in that kind of form, when him and Alvarez combine like this, it's beautiful. And his goal, if you haven't paid too much attention, if you were not watching the show I was on, for example, I'm just saying, on Tuesday, go and check it again and just keep your eyes on Antoine Griezmann's movement, because Alvarez does his thing on the left-hand side. He takes on his defender. He's going to cross the ball at some point. But Griezmann does one run, and then a second run, and a third run, a fourth run, and a fifth run. His defender is literally, his head is spinning, and then it's a tap in. And this is those players, whether they're 34, 39, 40, wherever they play, 5-a-side with you and Nadem, or 7-a-side with you and Nadem in Manchester on Monday night, and producer Chris, wherever Antoine Griezmann will be, he will always have that. And that's why he's still very special at 34.
Beautiful answer. Big theme for us tonight has been number 9s. Napoli beat Sporting 2-1 in the Champions League, thanks to 2 goals from Rasmus Højlund, who of course is on loan from Manchester United, with an obligation to buy if they qualify for the Champions League, which they almost certainly will. Both created by Kevin De Bruyne. So James, I know 9s has been the theme, but if you think it's more newsworthy to go in on De Bruyne, then I'm cool with that.
Well, it was newsworthy because at the weekend, Napoli lost for the first time. It was a top-of-the-table clash against AC Milan. They went behind early, a couple of goals from Christian Pulisic. Then Milan go down to 10 men. De Bruyne scores a penalty. They've still got half an hour to play. And what does Antonio Conte do? He takes off Kevin De Bruyne. And De Bruyne was not happy about that. And so this was a story for the days leading up to that Sporting game. And De Bruyne starts against Sporting and puts in the best display that we've seen from him so far in a Napoli shirt. His driving run, assist for Højlund, sets up the first goal, and then the second goal, the winner, is a cross from De Bruyne for Højlund. And, I mean, we haven't mentioned Haaland tonight. We've mentioned him in passing, but we haven't really focused on Haaland and what he was doing in Monaco, maybe because of the result. But Haaland left a comment, I think, on Kevin De Bruyne's post. And De Bruyne posted, I think, on Instagram about this partnership between him and Højlund. And Haaland just said, feed him. and I think that shows the kind of almost kinship and friendship between sort of rivals. I don't know whether Haaland and Højlund were close when they were both living in Manchester, but clearly he's been supportive there. And it was really interesting listening to the post-match interviews on Sky Italia last night, because one of the journalists, Paolo Condò, asked Kevin De Bruyne, he said that first goal where you're running at the defence and you've got a striker running beyond the defence and into the space behind, and you play the ball to him. He was like, that is reminiscent of the way you used to feed Erling Haaland. And De Bruyne appreciated that observation. He was like, yeah, actually, they are two guys who love to run behind, left-footed striker. Obviously, Erling, different in size, physicality, but there are some similarities there. And certainly Højlund, 3 goals in 5 games since escaping the black hole that is Man United, where Dr. Karl will go in one day and be the only person who sorts Man United out. But again, goes to show that Man United players are not bad players. They're just in a bad place.
Yeah, context is everything, isn't it? Anthony cried and was, in his own words, depressed when he was there. McTominay was just another player, and all of a sudden he's an icon. Rashford, who's been involved in 6 out of the last 11 goals that Barcelona have scored, is shining. Context is absolutely everything. But context also goes to De Bruyne. And this is a question for James. So I recently heard Thierry talking about De Bruyne and his experience with the Belgium national side. And he talked about a special brain. That is somebody that needs the right context, the right treatment to actually get the best out of him. I think we with Christophe Terray also mentioned that a few times. So is Conte the kind of manager that will have that in consideration instead of clashing or saying to De Bruyne, if you're upset, for being replaced, sorry, but that's what I do? Or would he just be a little bit more sensitive about that kind of thing?
I mean, De Bruyne, after giving that answer about the commonalities between Haaland and Højlund, he did say, you've all blown this out of proportion. My reaction to being substituted at San Siro on Sunday night was purely because I'm a winner, and I believe that I could make the difference in that game. The manager saw it differently, thought if we had a couple of fresh wingers on, dribblers, they could be that low block that Milan found themselves in. He disagreed, but it isn't the end of a relationship, quite the opposite. Conte has been on his own learning experience over the last year. I wrote about this for The Athletic a couple of weeks ago, where, he's most associated with playing a system that Dr. Karl likes, 3-4-2-1 or 3-5-2. And yet in the last year, he's moved away from that, because when he had Kvaratskhelia, he was like, I can't have this winger playing as a 10. I can't have this winger playing as a wing-back. I need to adapt. So started playing 4-3-3, 4-4-2. And certainly this year with Kevin, he's looked at it and said, okay, the guys who won us the league last year are the 3 midfield players in that Scudetto winning team. I'm not going to leave out Anguissa, Lobotka, or Scott McTominay, but I'm going to find a way of making this all fit together with Kevin. And again, De Bruyne was speaking about the role that he's been playing so far this season. And sometimes it's worked, sometimes it's not. He's still learning from his new teammates, still learning from his new manager. But he did say it's quite like when he first came to City and had to play with David Silva, where David Silva was the guy who was playing further forward as the 10, and De Bruyne would have to sometimes be a 6 or sometimes move out wide. And he's having to do that now, again, with Napoli, and it obviously worked really well on Wednesday night against Sporting. But Conte is very respectful in, again, changing in order to accommodate Kevin. And, the week before he substituted him against AC Milan, he did say he's a little genius.
Guillem, James, Jules, lovely show. Great to have Dr. Karl on as well. I think he's going to be a firm favourite. Thank you, guys.
The Football Daily Podcast on BBC Sounds.